One of the very best things I did on my journey to become a 7-figure entrepreneur was I stopped taking sales calls. Now, this was huge for me because for a really long time, I took a minimum of 2 sales calls per day. Wrap your brain around that. I looked it up. The average, this is kind of crazy when I think about it. This was way back when the Acuity was a calendar software. So I ran like my Acuity dashboard things and it gave me the average number of calls I had in a month. That average was 101. The average, meaning some months I did more than that. So do the math on that. That's like 4 calls a day on average. So I really hustled. But here's the thing, as an introvert, totally draining, right? If I get my energy by being in a room alone, which I do, and I'm talking to all these people, that's a lot. So I knew something had to change, and it was one of the big reasons why I was stuck at 6 figures and wasn't hitting 7 figures. And so what I wanted to do is walk you through how I did that. So how did I close high tickets without taking sales calls? What does this whole process look like? Step 1, you're going to need to commit to the process, okay? The process from switching and stopping doing sales calls to closing over DMs or direct messages, like messages in your inbox, can almost feel unbelievable, right? When I tell people like, oh yeah, like people think, oh, high ticket, you have to close over the phone because that's what everybody's done. But I regularly close, 20,000 to 72,000, depending on the length of contract that I sign. I regularly close high ticket, like very high ticket coaching programs over my DMs without needing to do a sales call at all. So it's entirely possible, but it's a process. And if you don't commit to it, you're not going to get to reap the reward from it. So the first thing that I do is I commit to the process. Step 2, you need a really good process in place for the follow-up. Now, this is something that I teach every single day to my 100K mastermind students, and I walk them through how to get processes in place so we can follow up automatically. So it's not something we have to worry about, and follow up in a way that feels good and natural. But here's the stat that you need to know, okay? 80% of sales are closed after 5 follow-ups, 5 follow-ups or more. But only 20% of entrepreneurs or like salespeople follow up more than 5 times. So I'm gonna say that again a little bit simpler. 80% of sales are closed after a bunch of follow-ups, but only 20% of people do a bunch of follow-ups. So what does that mean? That means 20% of salespeople are closing 80% of the sales. If we put it in my terms, I am closing 80% of high ticket coaching. I'm part of that 20%, and I'm taking the lion's share of high ticket coach, clients because I have a good follow-up process in place. Whereas another coach who doesn't have a good follow-up process in place, she's closing 1 or 2 clients for every one of my 50 because I have a really good follow-up process in place. And that's what I teach my students in the 100K Mastermind program. But really, it's especially true when you're not doing a phone call, because the fortune that, it's the cheesiest thing in the world, but it's true. The fortune is in the follow-up. And so you're gonna need to create and fine tune. If you're gonna do this, so you're not needing to have sales calls, you just have to fine tune your follow-up process, which frankly, if you're closing high ticket especially, you should be doing follow-up whether you're doing calls or not, but it's especially relevant when you're not doing phone calls. Step 3, this is important. You're gonna need to master reading nuances through chat. Okay, now this was hard for me to do, but when you're on a phone call or you're on a video call, you can read body language or you can hear body language. And that's actually a really important nuance, especially when it comes to high ticket coaching. These nuances, these little body languages helps you navigate the sales conversation over texting, over messaging. So for example, like if somebody uses an exclamation point, they're more enthusiastic. If somebody uses a period, they might be less. If they don't use any punctuation at all, it could mean that they're not as interested. There's nuances. That's just one example. It could not mean that as well, depending on the scenario. But you have to get really good. If you want to get rid of sales calls, you have to get really good at learning how to read body language and master that over medium where you're not able to get that feedback visually or with your, hearing it. So you need to learn how to read body language and tonality over your DMs. Here's the thing though, this work is worth it. Switching over to DMs is one of the big reasons that I was able to scale. It's not the only reason why I was able to scale, but it's a big reason why I was able to scale because I wasn't bottlenecking my success with things like no-shows or tire kickers, people who really weren't interested but just wanted to talk to me. So I was able to work smarter, not harder, and be able to even have 10 sales conversations going on at once, which again is more efficient use of my time than one sales call, then one sales call, then one sales call, then one sales call. So it's just one of the many things that laid the groundwork for me to go from 6 to 7 figures. Now, if you're currently plateaued and you want to get to 7 figures, you could be a good candidate for my 100K mastermind. It's pretty exclusive, just full disclosure, it's pretty exclusive. We only bring on one person, and there's about 32 people who want to join for every one person that we allow. So we're pretty choosy, but if you want to take a look at the process and see what it could look like for me to help you scale your business to 7 figures, you can go to mariawendt.com/apply or click the link in the description below. Again, this isn't for everybody, but if you're serious, you're willing to roll up your sleeves, work hard, and implement what I teach, could be really helpful for you as you go from 6 to 7 figures.